I don't know where's the line. Some people like to go all the way to the edge. I can get away with it. I can get away. And where's the line? We can't see the precipice. We don't know. Some people have been doing it for 6 years and thinking, I can do it. I can get away. I can get away. And pretty soon you go, they're gone. And you say, I wonder what happened to me. You've been doing it for a long time. Just abusing the grace of God. That still happens. Let's say you hit bottom. You're a Christian. You messed up. I mean, really messed up. Royally messed up. Embarrassingly roast up. Gone beyond. You fell down 50 times. Let me ask you, can God forgive you? Can God restore you? Can God redeem you back? But he will not force you. Can he force you? It has to be up to you. You cannot just come back, from the world and just say, I'm back. You cannot do that. You need to ask the Lord to forgive you. Acknowledge that you fell and acknowledge you messed up. Boom. That's it. Verse 43. Verse 43, the land also should be empty by them and will enjoy its Sabbath while it lays desolate without them. They will accept their guilt because they despise my judgments and because their soul abhor my statutes. Yet for all that, I love 44. If you have a highlighter, underline this. This is heavy. Yet for all that, when they are in the land of their enemies, I, God, will not cast them away, nor shall I hate them to utterly destroy them and break my covenant with them. God says, even after I mess them all up, even if I take them way out there to the ends of the earth, he says, I can't. I cannot annihilate them. Why? Because God made an oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's another feature of God. He can never break his promise. He saved you. Paul says, I am confident that he who began a good work in me will be faithful to what? To complete it. He called you. He's faithful. He will never leave you nor forsake you. You see, God keeps his promises. Here, God says, verse 45, but for their sake, I will remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt in the sight of the nations, that I might be their God. I am the Lord. These are the statutes and judgments and laws which the Lord made between himself and the children of Israel on Mount Sinai by the hand of Moses. And now in chapter 27, we have just a chapter that deals with vows and tithes. There was a vow to the Lord, was a promise of a special gift. And so here, the people of God, you gave a vow to God. And you gave a vow to God in giving, because it was all to the maintenance of the tabernacle. Now, God, from the beginning of time, has always used his people to continue the work. This is not a New Testament phenomena that we give to the Lord and we give our tithes and offering. And by the way, when we get to 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and 9, you'll notice that we are not bound by the law. People say, I got to give my tithe. We're Christians. Paul says, we got to give in accordance how much we have been prospering. What liberty. So if you're unemployed, you can only give so much. If you have no money, you cannot give. What a liberty. But God has always used his people, Moses, to build a tabernacle. And then you have Solomon to build the temple that David, his father, wanted to do. And he asked the people, bring the gold. And then in the second temple, Ezra, Nehemiah, the people of God says, we're going to build. And there was the people of God. God desired them to give, because it was very healthy for them to give back to God, because God says, I own all the property. You are my people. I redeem you. And so it was a way to keep them in check, that they were to give for the working of the tabernacle, because the tabernacle was the center of the life of the Jew. And the Levites were the only tribe. They were not allowed by God to go to work outside. They were not to plant. They were not to sow. They were not to deal in will and property. They were not to be property owners. They were not to be business owners. All they had to do was a mandate by God to keep the temple. So when people brought their tithes and their first offerings, they gave it to the Lord, and what was left over, it was to give to the Levites so they can eat. That was their paycheck. And so here we find in this the vows. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when a man consecrates by a vow certain persons to the Lord according to your valuation. The word valuation means assessment or appraisal. If your appraisal is of a male from 20 years old up to 60, so there is a redemption. If you're over 60, if your male is 15 shekels, if your female is 10 shekels. If you're 20 and 60, for males is 50 shekels. Now notice, if you're between 20 and 60, young man, virile, strong, 50 shekels. For female, 30 shekels. So see, lady, nothing has changed yet. Ages 5 through 20, they're children. If they're males, 20 shekels. If they're female, 10 shekels. Up to 5 years old, for male, 5 shekels. For female, 3 shekels. And you get that from verses, all the way from verses 3 to the end of verse 7. Verse 8. But if he's too poor to pay your valuation, then he shall present himself before the priest, and the priest shall set a value for him according to the ability of him who vowed. The priest shall value him. Now, a vow to the Lord was a promise of a special gift. These monies, again, were used by the priest for the general maintenance of the tabernacle. Now, when a vow has been made, it's expected by God to be fulfilled. This is why we are told in Proverbs 20:25, it is a snare for a man to devote rashly something as holy, and afterward to reconsider his vows. Or the one we all know from Ecclesiastes chapter 5 verse 4. When you make a vow to God, do not delay to pay for it, for God has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you have vowed. Better not to vow than to vow and not pay. We are not told in New Testament teaching to make a vow to God. That's what brings guilt. God, I promise you, man. I promise you, if you get me out of this one, I vow myself to you. I'll come to church. And God promises you, does everything. And then you go, well, later on. Or you there and the porcelain God. Oh, God, I promise I make a vow to you. I won't drink no more. No more, I make a vow. Just get me out of this one. Finally, you get rest. The room stops going around. And the next day, the vow went out the window. You're doing it again. We're not to make vows. Oh, God, if you bring back my girlfriend, if you bring back my boyfriend, I'll make a vow to you, I will not buy Britney Spears CDs anymore. And you don't do that. And so you make idiotic vows that you cannot fulfill, especially when it comes to diets. You make a vow, if I can lose weight, I'll buy, don't make any vows. We don't need to make any vows. The only vows you got to make is when you join the military or you join your spouse. That's when you make a vow. And this Saturday, I'm doing a wedding for a couple here. And we already talk about vows. A vow it's not something stupid.